All right, here we are. Thank you, Kenya, for joining the Think Things Through podcast. This is the first podcast that I am doing, and I'm glad to have you be a part of it.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Clayton. It's my pleasure to join you.
I'd just like to introduce Kenya to my listening audience. Kenya Rahmaan is the author of The Child Support Hustle and the founder of the Reform Child Support Now movement. She began her writing career in 2007 and specializes in child support guidelines and regulations. She earned an associate's degree in small business management from Columbia State Community College, a bachelor's degree, and a master's degree in business administration from Franklin University in her hometown of Columbus, Ohio. Kenya is a member of the board of advisors for the documentary Erasing Family, directed by Ginger Gentile. She's also the co-host on the Child Support Hustle radio show with Marcus J. Echols. Kenya has written a bill to re-abolish debtors' prisons and is continuing the fight for child support reform. It's a nice bio.
Oh, thank you.
I wish I had half the achievements as you, and I'm glad that you're doing things to talk about child support, and it's something that I had personal experience with, and a lot of other divorcing fathers and mothers do too. I'm glad you're addressing this publicly, and you're doing great things in this movement. So
Thank you.
I'd like to, first of all, find out from you your backstory and how you came into the world of child support.
Okay. My backstory is probably typical to a lot of custodial parents, unmarried custodial parents. I was receiving public benefits back in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, and back under the welfare and child support reform systems under former President Clinton. Those things changed as far as the requirements. One of those requirements was for the cooperation of the custodial parent with the child support system, and that meant suing the non-custodial parent for child support. That was unbeknownst to me. So if we're going to fast forward until 2006, the whole case was there. I, just like everybody else that's probably involved in the way that I became involved, but I was unaware of how all the things, everything that was going on with it. Well, I had relocated. My child's father was in jail, and he was in there for a child support warrant. So one of the ways that he could be released was if I gave permission for him to be released from jail. So they held court where me in Texas, him in jail in Ohio. And I realized at that moment that even though we weren't together, that was a lot of power for me to have over him just because we had a child together. And I started almost immediately trying to figure out how to get that case closed. And it took me 8 years.
Wow.
Fighting, I have to say fighting because they didn't want to do it, but going back and forth with Franklin County, Columbus, Ohio, child support, the state, the courts, trying to get that child support case closed. And at the time, the arrears were almost $30,000. So what I found out in my fight is that the arrears were not ever going to be paid to me. If he ever paid them, they would be paid to the state to recover welfare benefits. Excuse me. One of the main things that I found out that really changed my whole perspective on child support is that it was a welfare, and it is a welfare recovery program. So if you receive any public benefits like I did, we signed our rights to any child support that is recovered, and our children's rights to any child support that's recovered over to the state. So essentially, that's not even our child support or our children's child support. It's the government's child support. So when I found that out in my research, trying to close my case, like I said, I took 8 long years. I said, I don't think people know about this. And I want to tell people, if anybody else is going through this, I think they should know because it's important. It was life changing for me. When our case was finally closed, the lawyer prepared the documentation to file in court and everything. And it's also, I put those documentations, copies of my court papers in my book, in the back of my book. to show when it was closed and the arrears erased. But it was so difficult. And I said, if they treat a custodial parent, quote unquote, this way and with such disrespect and disregard, I could just imagine what non-custodial parents were going through, just trying to get a question answered or trying to get out of jail or whatever, you know. So that started my journey, and here we are today.
So you talked about your book.
Hmm.
In the back of your book, you had all the information. Uh, you wrote the book called The Child Support Hustle. Now, I've heard of you for many years. I've been writing on several different outlets. One blog that I had was called The Socratic Method, and now I've written in different places over the years, especially in the very beginning when I recently got divorced. I was trying to find out answers to some of the same questions you had, and I think that's kind of how we connected. But I
Right,
I didn't know who you were because you wrote under the moniker N.K. Clark.
right.
Tell me what's the reason for writing under that pseudonym.
Well, I chose that pseudonym, which is my initials, Kenya N. Rahmaan, and my birth name is Clark. My dad's last name is Clark, and he
Mm,
changed the last name in up into the years where our last name was changed. And the reason why I chose that NK is you don't know if I'm a man or a woman. That's the
right.
main thing. And you don't know what my race is. And those are
Mm,
two issues that can, I think, hinder people from or stop people from gaining information if they're bothered by who's delivering the information. And I thought that would stop a lot of people from picking up my book.
do
And
you do you think it helped or
oh, it,
or
it definitely helped.
yeah? Because I didn't know, and I was surprised when I saw your face. I was like, oh my God, she's a black woman saying this stuff, and you know, for a black woman to be speaking out against child support, it's like I I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it took a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we there's a lot of stereotypes in out here, and it's just the way it is. I'm not gonna go into that, but um, a lot of people were taken by surprise. But like I said, I wanted them to hear the message that I was trying to deliver and not get caught up in, oh, she's a woman, so she must be for child support. She must be trying to tell everybody how to put men on child support or something like that. And I
Right.
had nothing, like everything I'm saying is totally opposite of that. I tell parents on how not to get caught up in child support. That's my whole message, and telling them or trying to educate people how I had to become educated on what that system really means. And I didn't want anything to block that. So after a couple of years, I eventually had to say who I was, but by then people were, and they were, they understood, and they were rocking with me by that point, saying, oh, she's talking about some serious stuff. And so, and she's not, because I put references with everything. If you think I'm not telling the truth, or if you think any of my information, if it's wrong, here, go look it up, because a lot of people don't believe what I'm saying. What they did. Now people are getting more, they understanding more. This is a hustle and how the government is involved and everything. But back then, people wasn't, they wasn't really talking about it. And
So
you brought up how we kind of crossed, paths. And I actually ran across you when I was doing my research, and I saw that you told them, the judge, you kind of refused to be put on child support because you took care of your children. And that always stuck with me. And I reference you in my book, I believe. If I don't in my book, I reference you in my articles that I've written since. And I tell parents that men, go and fight for your rights. You don't have to, if you go in there and you take care of your children, who are they to tell you that you have to pay X amount of dollars? And I
exactly.
commend you for that. So you've
Well,
always, even when I started, I've always admired you for doing that.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
Glad I can help. I yeah, the article that I wrote was called Why I Refuse to Pay Child Support," and people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you don't pay child support." I'm like, "Why should I?"
Hmm.
I share my kids 50% of the time. She can pay for them when she has them, and I pay for them when I have them. Seems like it can work out, but a lot of people don't know that you can opt out of child support. there are other ways you can get around all this stuff, and you don't have to go through the government system, as you clearly point out in your book, The Child Support Hustle. Now, another question I have for you about the book.
Mhm.
Why'd you call it The Child Support Hustle?
Because that's what it is. I mean, I could have used the scam or uh, anything
Fraud.
like that. Anyway, the con or but the hustle. I'm from the hood, I guess. So the hustle is how you can be good or bad. It's a bad hustle right there. I mean, it's good for them, the government, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And like I said, the children who this is supposed to benefit aren't benefiting. If the money that was collected in the name of child support was actually passed on to the children, then we wouldn't have children living in poverty the way that we do. Because this has been going on for about 25 since the reform of the welfare system and the child support system. We're talking about 22 to 25 years now. And nothing has really changed as far as children living in poverty. The numbers haven't improved, anything like that, because they keep this money and then they use it for other things. And in the meantime, parents, non-custodial, I hate to use that term because a parent is a parent. It shouldn't be a label of based on where the child lives, but a parent who can't pay what the government deems their children are worth per month are then punished. And the punishments are unconstitutional. I always say that because it's just unconstitutional. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says you have to pay $100 a month to take care of your child.
Speaking of the Constitution, tell me about debtors' prisons and in your book, um, how and your activism, what you're doing to raise awareness about that, and where that came from and how it's intertwined with the child support hustle.
Well, debtor prisons were outlawed, as I'm sure you know, in 1833, and they are alive and well in 2021. And the way that they were able to uh, re I just lost the word I want to use, but reintroduce them into our society is through the child support system. And they penalize or they villainize fathers by calling them absent when they weren't in the home. Just because they didn't live in the home, they call them abandoners, deserters. And so they put this deadbeat uh, persona on them because they didn't live in the home and call them abandoners. So it's okay to lock up, incarcerate these men because now they're deadbeats. So if you don't have enough money, which most child support debt is owed by low income parents. So if you don't have the money to pay, they get locked up. If uh, if they don't give them a hearing, give you all a hearing, well, not you, but excuse me, give hearings to determine ability to pay, they're not supposed to issue a warrant in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So the debtor prison is unconstitutional, illegal, outlawed, however you want to put it. But because of the child support system and because society has said that's where parents are supposed to go when they can't pay X amount of dollars, it's accepted. Well, it's not, and we cannot keep accepting this. It cannot continue to happen. So I wrote a bill to reabolish debtor prisons and introduced it here in Texas at the Capitol to a few legislators, lobbied them. And it wasn't that they didn't like my bill or they wasn't, didn't support it. The one reason that kept coming up was that they did not want to upset their female constituency. So what can you do with
Fascinating.
that? You
Well,
know?
aren't you a female constituent?
Yeah. That I mean, and I mean, it's just so discouraging because you hit a wall. But everything, this is already the guidelines that I push out and tell people about are already there. Like you shouldn't even go to be punished if you're not willfully failing to pay or provide for your children. That word willfully appears in every statute, every guideline. I don't call them laws, but guidelines, every little rule that they have. Willfulness is there, it's key, but they just ignore it. And then people are punished behind it. And the punishments that parents are subject to through the child support system are they're brutal.
Yes.
They are brutal, where people actually have died, lost their lives, whether from suicide or from actually, like Walter Scott in South Carolina ran from a police officer after he was stopped because he didn't want to go back to jail because he had warrants for child support, which that debt was probably owed to the state, which never would have went to his kids because it was to recover welfare. You know, so it's bad. The system is bad all around, and a lot of people say we need to reform it, and I do say reform, but really it needs to be abolished.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I saw in some of your writing recently, especially over the past year when the people were talking about abolish the police and uh, you wrote abolish child support. I was like, you know what? That's very interesting.
Hmm.
Speaking of things that, abolishing stuff, I read about the Bradley Amendment. And that's one of the things that, it's fascinating to me because once an order is put into place, the Bradley Amendment. Well, actually, I want you to explain the Bradley Amendment.
Sure. The Bradley Amendment, introduced by Bill Bradley in '86, that makes it means the states cannot retroactively reduce child support. So it accumulates when you hear people talk about they owe $20,000 in child support, $50,000 because they go back from the date the child is born and up, and not from the date the order is established. And the state will not erase or retroactively reduce that debt for anything. There's been stories of POWs in Iraq where they weren't even here to be able to pay the child support, but they would not reduce the debt. Um, and also, I had to write this, it automatically triggers a non-expiring lien whenever child support becomes past due. And those liens affect everything. They'll revoke your passport, suspend your driver's license, all this stuff by this Bradley Amendment. So without the repeal of that Bradley Amendment, that debt is going to just sit there. And parents are punished based on that debt. And currently, there's almost $24 billion worth of state-owed debt that's sitting there that's mostly uncollectible. The experts have said this, but parents are still getting punished by the state-owed, and that's welfare uh, debt. So we need to repeal the Bradley Amendment. And before that, or during that, I just started an initiative where we want to petition the Biden Harris administration to erase all state owed child support debt. Like I said, it's almost $24 billion now. And this money, like I said, will not reach the children. It's going back into the government for money to recover welfare. And if anybody knows anything about the welfare system, it's a grant. It is not a loan. It is not to be repaid. We already repaid it with taxes. We already paid it with taxes. So it's already been paid for, and it's not going to reach the children.
I'm glad that you're exposing all of this stuff, and some of the other things I want to ask you about your advocacy. What has been some of the reactions to your book, your YouTube videos, and your social media content? Has there been a lot of negative reaction to it?
Uh, in the beginning, now, well, in the beginning it was pretty negative, but I expected that. This is not a fluffy and fun subject,
Mm.
and I always tell people I have never said for people or advocated for people not to take care of their children. I have two children I raised. I'm a single mother, so I know the struggle and it is real. So it's not that. It's just the government should not be able to tell us, just like to tell us how much we have to spend, punish us when we can't, everything that goes with the system, or tell us what our rights are. So I have a problem with the whole thing. So yeah, I get harassed a little bit, had a
Uh,
couple death threats, things like that.
really?
But yeah, it goes with the territory. I guess I didn't know, but
Well,
I
I'm glad you're standing firm and continuing to do what you're doing. Uh,
thank you.
it's not easy, But
So,
some of the things another question I wanted to ask you is, say for instance, someone's caught up in the whole child support hustle and they got hustled and they want to do something about it. What should they do? What should they know? Uh, I should say, let me ask you a question. What should someone know before they get caught up into this game?
um, first, okay, they before they even can get a put a child support order on you, paternity has to be established. So I suggest, and this is quite controversial, but fellas, if you're not married, or some people say if you are married, you might want a DNA test because they can put you on the hook for child support. Even boyfriends, even if you know that that's not your child, but you take on a role as a father and you've taken on a role for X amount of years, most states is 2 years, you can be on the hook for child support. So I guess just know what your rights are when you take that role. First of all, get a DNA test. Second of all,
How is
know
that
your rights.
how is that controversial?
Just looking on social media, especially for married people, but there's a lot of married guys that fathers that reach out. Well, I can't call them fathers because they're married and come to find out, after the divorce or everything, they find out that none
It's
of the
not their
children were
kid.
theirs.
Really?
But they still have to pay child support because that's
They're
the role because they were married and that's their by legally they're the father.
Why does
So
anyone think that's even morally justified?
they don't. It's all about money. This child support system is not about children. It's not about the best interest. It's about it's for the best interest of the government. That's it. The stuff that they do and how they operate is just not. It's not in the best interest of citizens. So
I have
I don't know if I answer because there's so
no.
much I could tell people, like don't do this, do that. But that would be the thing for the fellas, like just
First
get a
thing,
DNA test
get a DNA test.
and don't sign anything.
Mm.
Oh, if you go to the childsupporthustle.com or you can go to all our social media links and stuff. There's a ton of information there. And I tell or talk to parents, not parents, new parents, and try to help them navigate through the system before they even get to the system, after they're in the system. However, I can try to help. I try to give out the information.
What exactly do you mean by defund child support? What would that actually mean in practice?
Well, when a system, especially a government system, isn't working, we need to take the funds from them. And they get a lot of funds just for the states to operate. They get incentive money, right? So just in fiscal year 2019, collectively, the states made almost $500 million just to operate the child support system.
They get the money from the federal government.
Right. Then they get a return on investment for every dollar that they spend. For instance, Texas made $11.68. That's money that they get back. There's so much money that the government gets from this child support system that's not reinvested into the children. So defund it, take their money away from them. It shouldn't even be operating in the first place. It wasn't designed. I mean, it's not broken. It was designed this way.
So
So when I say
you believe the states should not be getting any more federal money, or you believe we should just dismantle the whole child support system altogether?
yes, I think it needs to be dismantled. Now, I say reform because I know to dismantle a system at this size, this machine, it's going to take some steps because of everything that's involved and how many people are involved. So I know reform is going to have to happen before we can just break it all down because people do depend on this system. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it just needs to defund it. It needs to be abolished completely.
Mm.
And I mean, no funds.
You're like snatch. Nope.
Snatch them.
You get nothing.
Show us where the money's going. I mean, $500 million, and that's not even including the money that they get for TANF. the block grants they get for TANF that they're supposed to spend on low income families that they keep in their coffers for rainy day funds that they don't spend. I mean, they have so much money, and then they want to, hold back. They don't want to distribute it, distribute these funds. So I have a problem with the whole system.
Uh, your uh, co-host Marcus J. Echols. One day I probably should have both you guys on, but uh, I'm sure he feels the same way. Does he? And do you both work in tandem to try to get changes in Texas state law? Like, how do you both work? Is he just the co-host on your radio show? By the way, where can people hear your radio show?
If they Google the Child Support Hustle
Mm-hmm.
blog talk radio show, we have episodes on there. We haven't done any new episodes because of COVID and all that. So last year was kind of, it was crazy last year. So we're going to be uh, putting out new shows here shortly. But you can go if you Google the Child Support Hustle, we come up. We got YouTube. If you go to the childsupporthustle.com, you can
Mm-hmm.
reach all our social media. But the blog talk radio show, you'll have to put in radio.
So, are you working with him in order to move things forward? Are you doing this pretty much on your own, or is there a team of people that you're working with?
Yes, I work with a team of people that,
Okay.
they support, excuse me, the child support hustle and how I've structured this, and they, add their ideas, and we talk collectively and see how we can best make uh do the most and get real change.
Do you think that you'd like to have different chapters in different states, or is it just something that you just believe people should follow your your model that you're doing in Texas? Would you rather have just you working with your team of people, or would you rather have people doing it in different states under the child support hustle
Well,
banner?
actually, I work with a lot of people all over. Like Marcus is in Alabama.
Mm,
I have people I work with. Carnell Alexander. I don't know if you heard of him. He has the attorney. He had a paternity fraud case out there in Michigan. So I'm in Michigan. I'll go to his rallies. He talks at when we hold something, a town hall or something. California, I go out there. So I travel all over the place. I've spoken in DC. Um, I've been out in Atlanta. So I'm wherever y'all want reform, call me and I'll be there. So, but I work with whoever, and if you have an organization, we can join forces. So I know it's going to take more than just the child support hustle. It's going to take us, like, we're going to need at least 1 million people
mm.
saying, we need reform. It's going to take that. So,
Well, there are a lot of people out here that want changes to be made, and it's not going to happen overnight, as you know, and it's going to have to change hearts and minds and get information out to people to make them aware of what's going on and how much of a hustle this truly is. Like you said before, the ways to get in contact with you is thechildsupporthustle.com. You have a YouTube page, you have
yes.
Instagram, you have Facebook, MySpace. No, I'm just kidding. You got MySpace too.
We're
uh,
asking everybody that so we can keep account for our petition, if they could go and like our Facebook page, just so we can we're trying to get to our 100,000 signatures. So that's the way that we can monitor all the people. So we can 100,000 people, of course, will equal 100,000 signatures. So if
mm,
they can go to our Facebook page, the Child Support Hustle, you'll see a copy of my book. I'm sure there's other pages on there, but you'll actually see a copy of the Child Support Hustle on our page. And you can just go like. Let's take a second click. If you're going to sign, if you're not going to sign, please don't like, because we're trying to get a valid count.
mm. Uh, Once again, I've read the Child Support Hustle. It's fascinating. It's well documented. It's detailed, and I heard so many stories in there that just blew my mind, and it made me furious, more furious than I've been, you know, since I got divorced. And I thought I was like, I shouldn't say I was over this whole thing, but I
Mhm.
realized that it's the web that the government has created to ensnare so many different people into this, as you call it, the child support hustle. It's infuriating,
Yes,
and
it is.
I'm glad that you're doing the right thing and getting information out there. And one last question I have is, what, other than
Thank you.
your petition, you know, what are the next steps in fighting against this child support system?
Uh, the next step, we want to repeal, we want to force the legislators to repeal the Bradley Amendment. We want shared parenting, 50-50, no child support
Yes, you
when
sound,
automatically.
before you go on, you sound just like a another person who I've talked to over the years, especially last year. I was at one time the chairman of the New York affiliate of the National Parents Organization, and this woman named Emma Johnson I connected with because she has her own advocacy group, and she's written plenty of pieces about, when people get divorced or separated, there should be no child support, no alimony. And she's a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you said that." And she explains why, and there's
Mm-hmm.
very valid reasons to do that. And it's good to hear more people saying this because it's true. So go back to what you were saying again as far as no child support.
Yeah, 50-50, no child support. If both parents have their child equally, they should be responsible financially for when their child is with them. And no child support, there's no need for it. And that way the government isn't getting a penny off of that family. Um, so everything I think has to go through the legislators. Like we have to get bills passed, and of course, we need to re-abolish debtor prisons. Nobody should be going to jail because they're poor. That has to stop. So I think everything is a priority, number one priority, but it's going to take steps. That's where reform comes in instead of just abolish because that's a lot. So
Yeah,
we have to build and of course building the numbers. We have to get our numbers up because everybody, like, it's easy for us to be on social media and voice our complaints and everything like that, but it's another thing to actually come out in the streets and march and protest and get out when people need you to get out. So that's another thing, is getting people more active. If we say we're having a protest and we need everybody in the streets, then we need everybody in the streets. We're
so
looking for 100,000 people for 100,000 signatures so we can petition the Biden-Harris administration to erase the state-owed child support debt. You can find out more if you go to my website, thechildsupporthustle.com. I just wrote an article, and I'm gonna do a video explaining it more. So, but we don't want to submit the petition until we get the signatures, or it's counterproductive. They're not even going to look at it.
all right, let's make that happen. Kenya Rockman, thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Clayton. Pleasure being on. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.